What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Sports Card Madness. I am very psyched for this one. So LZ's here. He's always here. And we have Adam Ray. I've followed Adam for a long time. He's also got a great podcast I'm sure he'll tell us about later. But Adam, to me, he might not agree, but I feel like he's like the top three in terms of like basketball card knowledge in the country, maybe even the world. So I'm like psyched to pick his brain. So welcome to the pod, Adam.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for the kind intro.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So
and Adam, I have to agree with Nick on the top three thing.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Top
I
three.
just
I feel terrible. I mean, how am I not number one? What the heck
You
are we
could be.
doing?
yeah,
You
it's
could
funny
be.
as I was
I'm
saying
teasing.
top three. I'm like, should I just say top one? Because
I'm
I was trying to
totally
think in my
teasing.
head, like, oh, geez. But
How do we
I'm always
quantify
impressed.
something like that? I don't think we really can.
No, we can't. No, we can't. We're just afraid to offend somebody that we're not thinking of, which is why
Right.
we say top three.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Adam, you have a really cool background that is very unique, right? A lot of us do different things, have different occupations, have different paths in the hobby. But you have a pretty crazy background. I know that you were in private equity. Can you talk about that a little bit, just the timing of it, and maybe why you got out?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a CPA. Went to school to be an accountant mostly because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And then, as most accountants find out, it's not always like the most fun place to be. Um, but what I did think was fun was accounting for funds. So I started work with a fund admin firm here in Salt Lake. Is like one of the first guys on. There's a place called Strata. I was the ninth guy on there, and I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. I was accounting for like hedge funds and fund of funds and all these different types of investment vehicles. And then I had a recruiter come knocking and said, hey, and this is like 5-6 years after I started. They were like, hey, there's a private equity fund here in Salt Lake called Mercado. They need a new controller, somebody to come in and do what you're doing, but instead of doing it for a lot of different funds, you're just going to come in and do it just for this private equity group. And there's not a lot of people who work there. There's like 9 or 10 people. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity for you. And I just sat there and I thought about it for a while. There's not more than a couple of people in the whole state who get to do something like that. So I took the opportunity. I was there for 7 years. We grew from being just a couple of growth stage funds to I think we had like 10 funds when I left. And we had a food and beverage fund, a couple of food and beverage funds. I even talked to my boss. You guys are thinking this is crazy. I talked to my boss about doing like a card fund or a collectible fund. Yeah, and so I was the main accountant on a lot of that stuff. I think at one point I was accounting for like close to $1 billion in assets, which isn't like crazy, but it was a cool position for me. I loved a lot of it, but at the end of the day, it still was just accounting, and I didn't feel like I got to make as big of a difference there as I'd like to. Even though I got to sit in on all the cool meetings with all the cool investor types, I didn't really get to do everything I wanted to. So I had the opportunity to work in cards, and I love cards, and so I took the shot.
Excellent.
Nice.
So for the audience that might not know what private equity is, it's essentially, you can invest in stocks and bonds and real estate. There are other categories. Private equity is another category. And these companies, in some cases, not all cases, they can buy a company, fix it up, grow the company, sell the company. And when Adam mentions funds, they'll raise, I don't know, it could be any dollar amount, a $10 million fund, a $100 million fund. And then they try to make 20% return on that fund and they give it to investors. Did I get that right, Adam?
You did really good. Our funds, the first one that I started with was 52 million. And when I left, we were raising a $400 million fund. So we had a lot of growth and it was awesome. And the only other thing I would say is you mentioned 20%. That's awesome. Our IRR on a couple of our funds was 30. And so IRR, yeah, Mercado is a great fund. And I did have a great experience there. I learned so much about like how to run a business there, not from running a business, but from watching the people who were like the investors and learning from those meetings. And I think the biggest, I've never really talked about this before, but the thing that I learned that was like the biggest lesson is that sometimes in life you have to you've got to take chances and you've got to like go after things. It's not always about like letting things come to you or being prudent. Sometimes it's like, go do that thing, because that thing is a really cool opportunity. And I think the world of private equity sort of sees that vision, or has that vision maybe more than most other groups, certainly more than accountants do. And so it was an awesome experience for me. But like I said, at the end of the day, I've always loved cards. My first job was in cards. I started, the first basketball card podcast and a basketball card magazine, which has been a successful business. And like, I just love cards. I don't love random tech companies, although random tech companies are cool. No offense to any present company. Like, it just wasn't as fun for me as cards.
Excellent. Yeah, I can imagine the rigor and financial perspective you actually can put into collecting is probably a benefit. You're not going willy-nilly after stuff. I bet you have like a plan, and it's.
I like to think so. It's wrong sometimes, but it's a plan still.
Adam, have you always had this entrepreneurial spirit? Like, if you even think of yourself as a kid or a teenager, I'm just thinking of you. I mean, you're not an old guy, right? So you were a CPA, you had this safe job, and then you got asked by a headhunter to come and work at this fund. You were there for a while, and then it's like, hey, I think I can create this magazine. I think I can create this podcast. So have you always had that spirit?
Oh, dude, I love that question. I wish I could say that I did. I kind of I feel like I stumble into things, right? Like when I was buying cards when I was a kid, I had a time where I realized that I was buying something on eBay and I saw something sell at the card shop and they were different prices. And I was like, whoa, I think I could buy in one place and sell in another place. Like, this is really cool. And so I started doing it. And I was like, I don't know, I was like 14 or 13 or 14 years old when I was doing that. And so I guess, always, maybe not always, but I would bump into things like that and go, this makes sense. And then one day I was listening to the Bill Simmons pod. You remember the old BS report when it was on ESPN?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is so cool. I wish that we had this for cards. And then that night I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And then of course it wasn't good. It was terrible. I wish I was as good as you guys at like knowing how to like put something together. I had no idea what I was doing. I started recording and put it out and figured out how to like load up a podcast, which was hard to do back then, and just put it out there. But I just sort of bump into things along the way and just go, is this something that I want to do? And I've taken some chances, obviously some big chances. The leaving PE thing was a huge chance.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, you're being modest. You're being modest. You've had this in you. I can just tell you've had it in you for a long time. At 14 years old, you had it in you, right? 14-year-olds, typical 14-year-old boys are thinking about, it's probably sports, girls, and like, what's the latest cool sneaker I can get? And you were thinking about, I can make a profit going to the local card store and selling it on eBay. So you've had it. It doesn't surprise me. You've had that in you. You touched on Basketball Card Fanatic magazine. I'd love to get into that with you. Did you leave private equity and like immediately start that? Was it something you were doing as a side hustle while you were there? Can you just talk to us about how that started and then it grew?
So this is embarrassing because I'll tell you why it's embarrassing. I was working hard in private equity. We were having our fourth kid. And I was like, I just want to do card stuff all the time. And so I started this like newsletter thing. And I didn't know that it would turn into a print magazine at all. And but the great thing about it was that there have been so many people along the way who've sort of stood up to say, hey, I'd love to help with this thing. So I was working like day to day in this controller job. And then I started doing this newsletter and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't know if there was any real way to profitability. Like doing a magazine in 2020 is probably the worst idea somebody has ever had, right? Like, am I wrong? Like, you guys are both really smart, smart guys. Like, what is dumber than coming up with a magazine in 2020? It was so stupid. But the thing that I always just was getting tired of is like, I felt like all hobby content was like all about dollars. It was all about numbers. It's like, and there's nothing wrong with those things. Let me be really clear. Like, I don't have any problem with those things. Those things are good. And a lot of people, that's what they really care about. But I like the cards, And so I like the stories. I like when you read something or when you hear a story storytelling is like fundamental to what I love. And I didn't realize this, but like I love telling stories, I love hearing stories. I don't always love the numbers stuff. And so I was like, let me start this like newsletter magazine thing. And then I had a friend, his name's Black Griffin Cards on Instagram. He's like, you need somebody to come in and design this for you and make it a real magazine, and give him all the credit in the world, because without him, we would have been just doing something in Word that I was printing to PDF and sending people out. It would have lasted 5 issues probably, and we would have been done. But instead, we got to like our 7th or 8th issue, and we did a test run on printing it. And when we got it in print, we were like, there might be something here. We could do something really cool here, because what we realized is like, this would be a fun thing to collect. This would be a fun thing to get in the mail every day. It's totally like not smart from like it's not smart from a perspective of like an efficiency model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what you guys do and how many people you touch when you do this podcast is efficient. It's smart. What we do with the magazine is not smart. It's totally stupid. It's like we're gonna have people write these things. We're gonna design these amazing things around them. Then we're gonna make them pay for a print thing to come to their house. It's awful. But what it is it's like super nostalgic. And what we found is that people love it. And I know I'm getting long-winded with this answer, so I'll wrap it up. But like, I was doing both at the same time, and I thought, is there a chance that we can make this into something so big that it becomes my career? It's become not only profitable, but like very successful, but it also isn't like enough to be, it's not like the only thing that I'm able to do, or that Kevin is able to do for us to have careers, right? We still have to have our own things that we're doing, but I've loved it, man. It's all passion. It's all collecting type content. It's for people say for collectors by collectors. It really is like, Nick wrote this awesome story about a Michael Jordan card for us that I loved, that he will see in his mailbox either today or tomorrow, which is kind of cool.
Sweet. I'm excited.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's a surprise.
Cool.
I didn't know this was going on.
I was in the most recent issue.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. Okay.
You're going to love it, dude. When it shows up, you're going to look at it, you're going to go, okay, like I get it. It's cool to get the stories in a way it feels more real. It's different. It doesn't hit the same cycle as all the other things do. And then, like I said, we've got people who collect the magazines. And so I've got people who contact me all the time who are like, hey, are you ever going to print those first 8 issues? Like, I'd really like to add those. I've got all the rest of them. And I'm like, I wish we could. We can't though. We're just doing everything we can to like sort of operate into the future, but we can't do old issues. We really can't. So anyway, that's my shortest version of a real story.
No, thank you for that background. You touched on a few points I want to make. I want to thank you for hitting the nostalgia piece of it. You're filling a void. Like, I know you're just kind of being coy and joking around. Like, why would anybody want to do this in 2020? But you really are. You are filling a void, especially today. Just let's think about NFTs and all that, right? People that really didn't catch on because I think people like to feel and touch trading cards, right? And also vinyl is becoming huge right now. Like, yeah, it's so easy to go on Spotify and all these other music platforms and get your music, but people want to feel and touch, and that's what you're doing. You're doing that with stories. People want to feel and touch stories, and they want to be able to collect that magazine. They want to be able to go to the mailbox, which me and Nick have joked around a lot about when we do a lot of TTMing, how it's great when mail day comes, you go to the mailbox and there's some exciting things in the mailbox. So, thank you for that. You're definitely filling a void. The other thing you touched on was that you enjoy telling stories. And I have to completely agree with you. You are a great storyteller. One of the things I wanted to bring up is for people who follow Adam on his different socials, and hopefully there's more after this show, Adam does a really good job of telling these short, sometimes longer stories about something interesting in the hobby. So I wanted to get into that. And I was really wondering, like, where do you find these stories? Where do they come from? And I was thinking, well, some of them are probably from his magazine, right? Whether they're actual articles that are maybe in the magazine or maybe stories that didn't make the magazine. But how are you getting some of these cool stories and then sharing them with the world? And you do a great job at it.
Thank you again. Man, so to go back, I got to go back in time a little bit to respond to this. So when I left Mercado, I went to PWCC. right? And it was right in the middle of this boom period of the hobby. And PWCC, I think, had visions of being like a $1 billion company, right? And PWCC has been unbelievably successful. They've been innovative. They've done all these incredible things. And that period was, I think, a period where they were sort of trying to figure out what they had the chance to be able to become. And so they had this vision for me to come in and do like a few things for them that were really cool things, guys. Like I got to go to Oregon once a month and do the premiere auction videos for each of the individual cards, which is something that Brent Higgins, you probably heard him. He had always done that historically, but they made me an offer to come in and do those. And I love doing that because basically my job was to sit down with each card in the premiere and to tell a story about the card or talk about why it was significant. I came up with like my own flair and things and I loved it. It was one of the best things. Like I did the video for the Luka Doncic that sold for like $3.5 million, right?
Cool.
I did so many, like I did several $1 million videos and several like big 6-figure videos, but also like I remember the first time I just got a Kobe refractor, a chrome refractor in my hand. I was like, I've never seen this card in my hand before. I've seen it in pictures, but I've never actually held it. And so there were so many of those things that were awesome. I got to do that. And I did a whole bunch of other things for their marketing. And I really enjoyed my time at PWCC, but I also got to like make more content, which is, I know you guys have the content bug. It's so much fun. Like making content about cards is so much fun. And I got to do this really cool, like a couple of really cool stories that did really well on their social. And then like PWCC ended up in a spot because of some things that had happened financially, specifically with their loans, where they were in a lot of trouble and they needed to lay off a bunch of people. So they laid off like 30% of the company, including people who were like less important to operations. And I unfortunately was one of those people. And it was terrible because I didn't mention this to you guys, but when I left private equity, like I left a lot of money in unaccrued carried interest on the table, and that never comes back to me, right? So I left this like well-paying, like great job that for accountants was awesome, to go to this world of cards, and then within a year I don't have anything anymore, and it's like it's just like a punch to the gut, right? It's so bad. But at the same time, I knew, like, I actually didn't feel like I had made a wrong decision. I felt like I made this great decision following what I really wanted to follow. And I knew that I was good at telling the stories, like you said, which again, I appreciate your kindness there, but I knew like I had something. I knew that I like was engaging people. And so PWCC said to me at the same time, they're like, listen, Adam, we had to let you go. Obviously, we're sorry about that and all these other things, but several people I worked with are like, we can't lose you for content. We really want you to keep doing some of the content. Would you mind still doing this on like a contractor basis? And oh, by the way, if you're going to do it that way, you can also go do the same thing for other people. If you want to, like if there's other interest in it, you can do it for them. And so I was like, okay, I've got the magazine. It's like kicking off some funds for us. Like that's something that I can be part of my job. And then I've got this PWCC piece. And are there other entities that would love for me to tell stories for them? Right. And so I was like, let's give this a shot. My wife went back to work a little bit. She works a day and a half a week right now. Right. And it was like, let's see if we can make this work. And so I've just like been making content in my basement, sitting here for like the last year now and doing everything that I can to help the different companies that I'm engaged with. And it turns out like it's been really successful. And I love that it's grown. The average one of my reels that I tell these stories on gets about 30,000 views, which is unbelievable. It's incredible. So I'm loving it. I love telling the stories. And to answer your question, because I know I did a lot of not answering your question just now, like a lot of times it's about what items are up for sale and understand and wanting to communicate to the community, here's why these things matter. Because a lot of times people don't know. They're like, I see this thing, I see what it sold for, but they don't know what the story is. Since I have literally 35 years in cards at this point, like, and I've worked professionally in cards for a decade, like I've got a lot of this knowledge and experience. I flipped my way to buying my house, right? I flipped my way to going through college. I didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I knew how to do these things when I was really young. Like I just have taken it all and tried to come at it from an educational and entertaining perspective, and feel like if I do that, then I'm doing my clients, the auction houses and other hobby entities well. That's what I've been trying to do. I know that's a long answer, but that's best.
No, thank you. And you are doing it well. I think about I've never had the opportunity to go to like a real auction house, right? Where like paintings are being auctioned off. But you see it in movies and TV shows. And when they auction these paintings off, there's always like a story before about the painting and who owned it and how it was acquired. And that's what you're doing. You're telling a background and a story about this great card that's up for auction recently coming up. So, all right, I'm gonna request that you show off your storytelling chops a little bit here. Um, there is a story about a John Stockton card when you were younger, and this is a little bit of a. Do you mind? Do you want to share this story? Okay,
Now,
so I know
this
this
to
one.
be fair to
this
the
one-
audience, Adam sent this to me, and I was like stunned.
So Nick hasn't told me, but he told me I need to ask you. So this is going to be like instant reaction for me. So you have a story about John Stockton card when you were younger, and that's all I'll say.
Man, so you're asking about like one of my most heartbreaking sort of
Oh no,
stories,
sorry.
but that's okay. So like I said, I've been doing this for 35 years.
Mm.
In 2002, right before I was about to go serve a mission for my church, I had an amazing thing happen where I was working at the card shop, local card shop, and a card came in for sale that was on the auction wall, or what we called the bid board. And it was a John Stockton green. I believe it was the 8 of 100 PMG green. And it showed up and my eyes got real big because I immediately knew that from the old Beckett's that these green cards had a massive multiplier. A multiplier basically takes a base card and it says the parallel of this is worth X times the base card. And I think if I remember right, the green had a multiplier of 1,000, like some insane number, 75 or 750 to 1,000, like some crazy thing. So I saw it and I was like, wow, I've never seen one of these before. I went home, got on eBay, because of course I couldn't get it on eBay on my phone because it's 2002. And I look online and I see that an Antonio McDice recently sold for close to $300. And I was like, ooh, if McDice is $300, Stockton's going to be a lot. So I went back to the shop and I proposed to my boss. I was like, hey, I know that this is like going to be a huge sale. What if I buy it and then you sell it for me? He's like, I'll totally do that. I was like, okay, great. I'll give you 20% or whatever it was. So I bought the card that Saturday. It ended and I won it for $77.
Oh boy,
$77. Amazing, right? I take the $77 card, I take it home, and I notice as I look at it, and you know this if you've seen a PMG green before, sometimes, or a red, sometimes the white cardstock sort of shines through the holofoil area. Like it's not supposed to do that, but the holofoil hasn't been laid perfectly, and so you see the white. And I looked at it and I was like, man, this card isn't perfect. Like, I'm not so sure this is going to really be worth a ton, but I put it up on eBay myself, figured out how to use the scanner, put it up on eBay. The card, like that night, I got a call from a guy from Australia. Now, back in those days on eBay, you would just get calls from people. They would be able to find your phone number, which is insane, right? So he calls me. He like tells me this long story about how he's been ripped off multiple times on eBay, and he's like really interested in this card. And I go, all right, well, I'll do it for $500. And he says, okay. And then he tells me after I end the item, hey, I need you to send it to me first before I pay. Now, this is insane, right? This is 20 something years ago, but even back then it probably didn't make any sense. But those were the early days. And anyway, long story short, I gave in. I sent him the card. I sent him a Reggie Miller autograph at a Stadium Club too. And I, he did the same thing to like 20 other people the same week.
Wow.
And I didn't get my $500. But the real story is this: like, I owned the John Stockton, the green. I'm like one of the biggest jazz collectors in the world. I owned the John Stockton green, and I sold it. And you had Nat on your show a few weeks ago, and it's the biggest card that he needs in the set. And it's the only one I've ever owned. I've never owned another green, but I did own the Stockton for a week before I sent it to the in Australia. So
That's crazy.
Do you have any idea what it's worth today? You must.
I'm sure to Nat it's 6 figures.
Oh,
man. Man, oh man. It's
Oh,
crazy.
Adam. Oh,
I know. It's a good lesson though for the audience.
yeah.
We talk about coining, we talk about trust, we talk about meeting in person or having a person a friend or a family member meet somebody in person. I don't want to rag on Adam because I've been ripped off too. We've all been ripped
Hmm.
off in some small way or whatever. Thankfully, it hasn't been six figures, but um, the lesson here is if get paid first and make sure you're actually paid.
Yeah.
That's really the
It
bottom
was
line.
it was 22 years ago too. So like the
Yeah,
world is
exactly.
so different now. I
Oh
mean, it just
yeah.
back in those days, there was no PayPal, right? Like
Right.
I was gonna get paid via an international money order once he got the card. It's just
Hmm.
it's a really different world today. But the other great lesson is like don't sell your best cards for the most part. Like hang on to your best cards because that was the best card I ever owned as a kid, and it was of my my favorite or my second favorite player. So I
Oh.
shouldn't have sold it, but I needed to pay for my mission. That was a
Right.
big part of it. And
Hmm.
so whatever, you live and
You,
you learn.
everybody
That's
has
right.
circumstances at certain points of their lives where they regret selling something or doing something or making a decision that obviously if you were 35 and you had that card, it's a whole different world, right? So you can't blame yourself for trying to make 300, 400 bucks as a 14-year-old. You're like a millionaire if you have 300 bucks and you're 14 back then.
Yes.
So I don't blame you at all. So this is so first of all, like I don't know, I'm sure a lot of the audience follows you. Your collection is like bonkers to me, especially like the 90s inserts and just some of the Kobe stuff you've got and jazz stuff. You don't have to tell us if you're not comfortable. But I know you mentioned on a pod, maybe 3 or 4 pods ago, you have no intention of selling anything, even though it's like life-changing money. How much do you think your collection is worth? Like if push comes to shove, if you don't want to say it, it's okay.
It's a great question. I don't really know. So much of the stuff doesn't sell very often and it fluctuates so much. One of my best cards is a Michael Jordan PMG championship. Like a year ago, it was selling for 300. It sold for 325 grand. And the
Mm.
last time it sold for 192. So something can shift by 50% in a year.
Right.
My Kobe logo mania, like, is it 200 grand, which is close to what I paid for it, or is it like 50 grand, or is it 400? I don't know. I have no idea. So
Right.
most of the stuff is really hard to value, and that's most of the stuff that I collect because I like cards where you don't see them very often. And so, but it's somewhere between $1 million and $3 million. I know that's a massive range, but that's probably about the value.
All right. So if you all heard that right, Adam very humbly said he has $1 to $3 million of sports cards. So,
Hmm.
as I said, I'm very impressed. It's
Yeah.
interesting what you say because people argue about comps all the time, right? They go on eBay, look at sold. When you're dealing with really high end stuff, like if I complete the 1969 Tall Boy signed set,
Yes.
there's two in the world, right? Or three in the
Mhm.
world. Maybe possibly you can have like 8 in the world ever. What's that worth? It's all about the buyer, the timing, the mood, the economy. There's just
That's
too many
right.
factors, right? So as you say, it could be plus or minus 50% with some of these things. It's not like a $100 card where it'll be plus or minus 10%. So that you made a good point there.
Yeah, I think the thing that maybe makes me a little bit I don't want to say it that way. I think one way that I've learned to think about cards for me is to not think about the values as much as maybe a lot of people do.
Mm.
I'm always thinking about I get people all the time who are like curious about the market. They're like, what do you think the market's going to do? And I've sort of become somebody who I don't even think about the market very much anymore.
Mm.
A lot of people get rich by buying into a market at the right time or selling out of a market at a right time. I'm not going to ever do that with cards. And so like that Jordan that I mentioned, maybe a better example would be the Kobe '08 Chrome Gold. I bought that for 9 grand
Hmm.
and it went up to 300 grand. And I looked at it and I went, this is a stupid number that doesn't make any sense. And I knew it didn't
Right.
make any sense at that time.
Mm.
And so people were like, why didn't you sell it? Why didn't you sell it? And I'm like, well, I don't really this sounds so like, I'm a pretty simple guy. I don't really need a lot of money. So I didn't sell it because I didn't want to leave somebody holding the bag. I'm doing air quotes on a podcast. That's never smart. But like, I don't want to like just rip somebody. I don't want to take somebody for all they're worth. I knew it wasn't a smart thing to have that card at $300,000, but I bought it at 9, which was smart, and I like the card. And so I don't want to think about how the market is going to go up and down. I don't even really want to think about how my collection increases or decreases. What I want to think about is how I can always be making my collection more of what it needs to be, like better in terms of like, does that fit what I want? And so the way that I've defined that is like, I collect basketball card history. I want to own the best things from basketball card history. And so I'm always doing it in that way. And people will be like, I thought you didn't like Michael Jordan, but I thought you didn't like Dennis Rodman or all these different players. I'm like, yeah, but they are really important parts of basketball card history. And so I collect those things. And try to make my collection as good as I can. And I don't think about the market really, or the prices really, as I do it.
Yeah, you made a good point.
If anybody,
oh,
sorry, Dick. If anybody wants to get a sense of Adam's collection, he recently did an episode on his own podcast with his daughter, which was awesome. And the two of them sat down and reviewed like 10 of his favorite cards. Mm-hmm. And his cards that they talk about in that episode are all wow cards. So that will give you a sense for people if you want to look it up.
I love that episode because Lucy, that episode was about Lucy. She's so smart, and she's my 10-year-old girl, and she like has things she loves about cards. I got for Christmas last year, I gave her a Shaquille O'Neal Intense from the 1993 or 94 Emotion set. It's like a $15 card. But we sat and we like talked about it for like 20 minutes after I gave it to her. And she just like looked at it and the design and the elements she liked and the things that she thought were really cool. And she's learning about art. She's learning about what she likes and design and things in a way that is really, really neat. And it's, again, that's a $15 card. It doesn't have to be crazy money. It's sort of like what's happened to my collection along the way is I've naturally tried to build it into what it could be. It's just gotten to this point. But guys, I never thought, like, I'm a simple guy. I'm again, super simple guy. I drive a 2010 Toyota RAV4 that I bought for like 11 grand, like 8 years ago. Right. Like I'm a simple guy, but I have just sort of built the collection in whatever ways that I can along the way to be the best that I can. And it was never supposed to be $1 million collection. That was never the goal. I thought at one point, maybe I'd be able to pay my house off with my cards, right? I didn't know that this would happen. It's just sort of naturally what's happened over time.
It's funny how, when you do what you love and kind of collect what you love, the value just sort of works out, right? It's very interesting. So Adam, the Harry Potter thing, I got to ask you about that. So I obviously kind of grew up a little bit with Harry Potter, and my daughter loves Harry Potter. You've got it's pretty badass Harry Potter cards. What is that PC all about? I know you're kind of like a family guy. I'm guessing that might be part of it, but why are you a big Harry Potter collector?
So I'm always late to the party on like pop culture things. And I didn't like Harry Potter when it was coming out at all. I didn't read the books early. I had all my friends who loved it. And then I told you guys about my mission, right? Like I went to England in 2002. So think about what the world was going through during 2002 with regard to Harry Potter and what it would have been like to be in England. I got there. My first area was in London, a place called Mitcham in Surrey. And there were just buses everywhere, like these double-decker buses with Harry on one and Hermione on the other. Ron on one, and I saw these buses and I was like, this Harry Potter thing is just a joke. Why does everybody like this so much? Like it's some stupid wizard story. And then I got home from my mission. I just didn't care. I didn't care. And then I got married. And when I was married or dating my wife, like right towards the beginning, her family went to the 6th one, which is called The Half-Blood Prince. And I watched the movie and I just loved it. I was like, what's the story with this Snape guy? And like, spoiler alert, but like, why does he kill Dumbledore? And what's that all about? And so my wife and we went back and we watched the first 5 on DVD. And then we watched 6 again. And then we watched them again. And we watched them again, just trying to figure out what was going on. And I like just fell in love with the Harry Potter movies. Then I read the books. Then the last 2 movies came out. Then my kids started being born and I started reading to them. And guys, I'm going to tell you, there is nothing better in the world than like having kids and reading to your kids the Harry Potter books, doing all the silly voices, pretending you're Dumbledore. Like do that. Do that forever,
Yeah.
because as a dad,
Mhm.
that is as good as it gets. So
It's
it's
great.
become this important part of our family. And then 2 years ago or last year, I don't even remember. I think last year at the beginning of the year, or 2 years ago, sorry, at the beginning of the year, I discovered that there were Harry Potter cards that were made during the movies, and this little company called Artbox had the exclusive license from Warner Brothers to make these really cool autograph cards, costume cards, and prop cards, and everything from the movies is like, most of the characters and stuff, their autographs are there. And then I discovered that Harry, Ron, and Hermione's actors have a card that they all signed. And so I started seeking after it like crazy. I spent, guys, it sounds so stupid. I spent, I think, 6 times on that card what anyone had ever spent for that card when I bought it, just because I had to have it. I just had to own this thing. And it took me like 6 months to finally locate somebody who was willing to sell it. I spent over 50 grand on a stinking Harry Potter.
Wow.
I never thought I'd do that. Like, that was insane, but I just really wanted it. And I think Harry Potter matters. I think that and I know, again, I'm being long-winded. I always am, and I apologize for that. But there's 2 things that I think you should do with every purchase. This is like collecting by Adam, one of my best pieces of advice. You have to think about every item with your head and with your heart. Do you love it? And do you think that it's a smart investment? And if both of those things are true, you should buy it. And that's what Harry Potter cards have been for me too.
Very cool.
Nice.
Very cool.
That is cool. Are there any other cards like that? What's the next card that you are waiting on? If it ever becomes available, you don't really care about the price, you're going after it. Do you have a list of those?
I do.
You do.
Yeah. I do. There's
Okay.
a few cards that I'd like to acquire in the next year or two, but they don't pop up very often. There's not like another Harry Potter type thing that's out there that will like just take me over. I don't think, that I know of, at least. I don't know of one right now, but the best answer maybe I can give you to that question is the way that the market has moved over the last few years has created lots of these opportunities where now stuff is a lot more appealing. And I like this a lot more than where we've been. Like, I like being able to afford some things and seeing some cheaper prices on things. And how do you guys feel about that? Do you guys like that the market's sort of come to a place where now you can afford some of the things that you like, or do you wish we were back 24 months ago?
Right. From the stuff that I'm dealing with, it's gone nothing but up. High-end vintage and high-end vintage autographs have, maybe there was a temporary dip, but when I'm dealing with cards that there are 3 of in the world, there is no market movement. It's just like, what's the next guy going to pay? But I will say it is nice to buy more affordable blasters and be able to find them for my kids at Target and things like that, where a couple of years ago you just couldn't even get them.
Yeah, similar for me. Vintage has stayed very similar in price for the past couple of years. And I'm trying to build the 1986 Flair basketball autograph set as well. I'm very close to that, 7 cards away now. But to Nick's point, I do a lot of like random TTMing on the side, especially like pop culture stuff, like Adam, like you're getting into with the Harry Potter. So I do like that. When I'm picking up these singles to go get TTM'd, they're definitely cheaper than they were a couple of years ago. So I appreciate that, and that's perfect, because that's what I would expect. I don't expect vintage to be dropping like some of these other ones, so it works.
I want to hear, when we're off the air, your 7 that you're missing from the 86 set. I know Nick completed it, which is nuts. It's so nuts. Is it Dave Greenwood? Is he the tough one for you right now?
No, I have him.
You're close. You're close though, Adam. It's the Steve Johnson card.
Oh, yeah. Steve Johnson
with Dave Greenwood.
Correct.
My bad.
Correct. Yeah.
That has made it I have somehow gotten Steve in a good mood a couple of times. And it's like, I don't know what, and then he disappears for like 2 years. And then, so I'm good. LZ's
I've sent probably 3 to his house, and I'm just hoping one of these days that he opens ones up. He opens one up and sends
maybe at some point he'll just send them all back to you. You get like 20 of them back at the same time.
He'll do a signing at some point. I tried to organize a signing with him, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. And then he just disappeared again. So, someday he will.
How many of the 132 are gone? It's got to be 20 or so, right?
Yeah, it's 20 now.
20.
Wayne Cooper.
20.
Yeah, 20. right?
Mhm.
One more just passed.
It's
That's crazy.
It's the best basketball set of all time, and it's not even close. I hear people who were like, I'm a rare card collector. I hear other rare card collectors talk about 86, whatever, because it's the most graded basketball set of all time. It's not rare, blah blah blah. But it is unquestionably the best basketball set of all time. I grew up putting it together, and I started it when I was 9. I finished it when I was 14. Obviously not the autographed version, but getting the Jordan when I was 14. I still have it. It's got 6 creases in it. It was one of the highlights of my childhood. It really was. And it's a BGS 1.5. I've owned probably 50 Jordan rookies since then, but that one I will always keep, because as a kid, that from a nostalgia perspective, it's truly one of the great moments of my childhood was getting the Michael Jordan rookie card.
Excellent. Very cool.
All right. So we're going to finish it up here because we want to be cognizant of your time. We always ask our guests the same question. You might know what's coming here, Adam. But if you could have a cup of coffee with an athlete or a sports figure that is alive or perhaps deceased, who would it be and why?
So my question to you on this one is, do they know, if they're deceased, do they know everything that's happened in the sport since they passed away?
Oh,
well, we can make up
sure.
the rules.
We'll say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do.
So, because if they don't, my answer,
Okay.
if they don't, I would love to be able to talk to the inventor of basketball, which is Dr. James Naismith, because I don't think he had any idea when he did what he did. The peach basket on this. I don't think he had any idea what would happen there. But the fact that basketball has become what it has been, and look, it's been like, I'm gonna go play basketball tonight. I'm gonna run a basketball tournament with a group here in the area. I play basketball with my kids all the time. I collect basketball cards. My career is basketball. Like, everything is related to it. I think that would be amazing. But as far as somebody who's like living, who today, goes back to my childhood, but John Stockton's 3-pointer over Charles Barkley is the best. It's honestly like the best moment of my whole childhood. Like, it was the best. Sends the Utah Jazz to the NBA Finals, where of course we didn't win, but those guys, they've gotten a lot of hate over the course of the years for different things. John Stockton, I could tell you all about that, why he's received hate and why in the public eye he's not a lot of people's favorites, and I kind of understand why people feel the way they do. But like, he played every game, almost every single game for 19 years, and just played his guts out, played super hard, and was always like the best guy, like super kind and just worked hard, and was a great example to me growing up. I'd love to like just sit down with him and like thank him for his example over the years, because look, today these guys make millions and millions of dollars, like so much more than those guys used to make. And they don't even have to play in the games. They can just take a game off because they feel like they need rest. And I think that's fine. I get why they do it. I understand the science behind it and all that, but like, Stockton played every game regardless of his injuries all the time growing up, and so I'd love to just thank him for that.
Very cool. I like the Naismith. That's awesome. Stockton's great too. Adam, so man, sadly, we have to end this pod. One of the things I took from you, I think, is a good life lesson for the audience. If you're in a job, could be anything, just make up anything, and you're making X, and you feel like you want to take a chance and make like 50% less, but be 3,000% happier. That's a chance that's sometimes worth taking. Save up a little bit so you can take that gamble. And I think Adam is a really great lesson for that. I've kind of did that in my own life as an entrepreneur. And, I admire that. It takes guts and everything, but yeah, it's pretty cool. So Adam, thank you for joining us. Where can people, follow you? Where can they get your magazine? Where can they hear your podcast?
Yeah, so Basketball Card Fanatic magazine is at bcfmag.com. Every month it will be delivered to your house. It's not just me, it's at least 5 or 6 people in every issue. So definitely it'd be great to have any new subscribers. You can imagine there's not too many people who are anxious to go out there and like get a magazine every month, but those who do, they love it. And then if you want to follow me on my Instagram for any of my stories, that's at the Real 27 Guy, and usually in other places, the Real 27 Guy or the 27 Guy. So I'd love to have any new followers, and DM me if anybody has any questions. I'm always up to chat.
Adam is an expert, everyone. So if
He
I
is.
have DM'd him with many
Mhm.
very obscure questions, like where is Upper Deck hiding, these secret Jordans and stuff like that. So
We should have
yeah.
talked about that for the last. I love that. I love that. I forgot that we'd had that conversation. I forgot about it.
We will have you back on again, I think.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
think we need to. But anyway, thanks again, Adam. This was great. We appreciate the time.
Guys are the
Thanks,
best.
Adam.
Thank you.
Take care.